You know, I still remember with fondness a couple of my early primary years Sunday school teachers. There was Esther. Esther was the preacher's daughter. I think I was in first or second grade. She was pretty. Years later, whenever the lads quartet that I sang in performed at her church up in Portland, we would always make sure we invited her to the stage to accompany us on one of our songs. She passed away, cancer, nearly 20 years ago now. I remember they asked me to come up from Eugene and sing at her funeral, and I was so honored. Then there was Mrs. Morrison. I have no idea what her first name was. She was old. She was big. And she was stern. No monkey business with Mrs. Morrison. But she was also hilarious. She was funny. And I still remember her deep chuckle when she laughed. And she had a wonderful sense of humor. She taught us the books of the Bible so that we had them memorized, and then put a little tune to it. And I still remember. At 72 years old, I still remember Mrs. Morrison and some of her teaching. Generally speaking, you know, it's mostly women who are children's Sunday school teachers, if indeed you went to Sunday school. And people like me, you know, we baby boomers, we owe a lot to them for their service and their sacrifice, their giftedness that they poured into our lives. I'm actually speaking today about some women that have something to teach us. Look at this first verse in the book of Luke, chapter 24. On the first day of the week, that would be Sunday, very early in the morning, probably still dark, the women took the spices they prepared and went to the tomb. The what? The women. Now, this author, Luke, is the only Gentile, the only non-Jew who wrote any of the New Testament books. He wrote this one, he wrote the book of Acts, which Acts is what we're studying on most Sundays together as I'm preaching through that. But he also had written this book, Luke, the Gospel of Luke. He had written it to his good Greek friend, Theophilus. And he just says here, the women, because he's already told us who they are. You see, if you go back just into the chapter before and look at the preceding verses, and you should do that sometimes. When you're reading and you go, well, who are these women? Look around and see if it tells you in the context. And if you go back, it says, the women who had come with Jesus from Galilee, that tells you something more about them, followed Joseph, he's talking about Joseph of Arimathea, and saw the tomb and how his body was laid in it. It was Joseph who put Jesus in his own tomb. Then they went home and prepared spices and perfumes, but they rested on the Sabbath in obedience to the commandment. So these are some women that had come from Galilee. Luke mentions that to let us know a little more about them. Now, if you look into all four Gospels, they give us some different looks, because that's what witnesses do, right? When you put the witness on the stand, you don't hear exactly the same words from every witness. You hear what was unique and memorable to them. And so if you happen to look into Matthew and you look at Mark and And of course, this is Luke, and if you look into John, you find out more about who were the women. We know one of them for sure was Mary Magdalene. You know, she was the one that actually was demon-possessed at one time, and Jesus healed her, cast out those demons. Another person that he healed that you'll see if you look at all the Gospels that was there in this group was Joanna. We have a Joanna here. Isn't that great? Was Joanna. She was the wife of a guy named Chuza or Chuza. She probably just called him Chuz. And she was married to him, and he happened to be high up. He was the manager of Herod Antipas's household. He was the household manager. And she was married to him. And the Bible says she followed Jesus around a lot. And she gave a lot of money to the cause, helped support that ministry as she and the other women. So you've got Mary Magdalene, you've got Joanna. We also read, one of them says this, that Mary, the mother of James, was there. Now, we're not talking probably about James and John, you know, James, the brother of John. There was another James that was part of the 12, and he was called James the Less. He was probably little. You know, we would call him Little James, Little Jimmy. You know, like Bonanza, Little Joe, the youngest. That could be possible, too, that he was young. But we think he was probably small. And maybe even the other guys gave him that nickname, you know. So his mother was part of this group, and her name happened to be Mary. There's others mentioned in the other gospel. I'm not going to get into all that, but we probably are talking here about at least 5 women. At least 5 women. And here's the point today. They have something to teach us. The women at the tomb teach lessons for today. Like this lesson. They found the stone. They did not find the body. Look at verse 2 with me. They found the stone. Boy, that was a hard point for me to find in the sermon, wasn't it? It's right there. They found the stone, rolled away from the tomb. But when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. They found the stone. It's the stone that rolled in front of the entrance. That entrance was cut out, by the way, in the rock. It was cut out by Joseph of Arimathea. We don't know exactly. Maybe he saw a little, like a mouse hole, and he looked in there. There's a cave inside there. It's not very big, but I could use it as a burial plot. And so he said, I'll knock out enough that we can get in. So I doubt that it was a 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot tall hole. I'm thinking out of rock, he might have put in a 3 foot hole. They weren't as tall then either. But they still would, I think, had to stoop to get in. So this Joseph of Arimathea, which is just a town, a Judean town, this Joseph, he covered the entrance. He himself rolled the stone, it says, over. And then the guards that were ordered by Pilate, the Roman who was behind the order of the crucifixion, ordered by Pilate to guard the tomb, and not just guard it, but also to seal it. On Friday night, they went and they sealed the tomb. That means they used rope, wax, clay, and in between the rock and the cave entrance, it was sealed. So it was that much more difficult to roll away, and that was evidence, if the seal was broken, that somebody had rolled it away, because you remember that the chief priests of the Jews and all that said, well, Pilate, you got to do something about this, because they're going to come and steal his body. We just know they are. Okay, we'll put a rock in front of it, we'll seal it. We'll put guards there, and they did. And the women had watched all of that. How do we know that? Well, if you read the chapter before, before chapter 24 here, you'd read that the women watched as they did all of that and put Jesus in that tomb. And so now it's Sunday morning. They wait through the Sabbath. They're good Jewish women, and they on this Sunday morning, they're on their way, and we read that they actually, not here, but in one of the other Gospels, they actually asked this question: who's going to roll the stone away? Who is going to roll this stone away? And they think, yeah, it's going to really be heavy. Do you think all of us will be able to do it? Now, Matthew tells us, of course, in his account, Matthew tells us, here's what happened. An angel came down from heaven, rolled it back, and probably because he was just really tired after rolling it back, sat on it, sat on the stone. And all of that was not to let Jesus out. That was all to let these women in, because the Lord knew that they were coming. God knew that it would be women, ladies first. God knew that. And he thought, well, we've got to make sure the door's open. It's open to welcome them. And so indeed it was. They found the stone unexpectedly in a different spot. It wasn't right at the entrance. It was moved to the side. But they did not find the body. They came to anoint the body, but it was nowhere to be seen. It was unexpectedly absent. I mean, that's what they came for, right? They came there for the corpse. The first century Jewish custom was to take these spices that the ladies brought, a mixture of myrrh and aloes, and to add to what was already there. You see, we read in, and again, this is how you find out. You read all the Gospels. But you read about how Nicodemus joined Joseph of Arimathea. And the two of them actually were involved in taking down Jesus' body and buying linen and wrapping his body, not just in linen, but also in maybe as much as 100 pounds of spices, aloe. And that was what the women wanted to do. They just kind of wanted to freshen it up. It was all about masking the odor of decay and all about retarding the decomposition. Guess what? Jesus experienced no decay, no decomposition, but they didn't know that. They came there to honor him. It was an act of care, of great care. They wanted to ensure that Jesus was buried with respect rather than being disposed of as a common criminal. Boy, were they surprised when they found the stone moved and the body gone. Have you been asking God for some assistance to move a stone? You got a stone? I always love to say to people that tell me they passed a kidney stone, oh, you're telling me the stone was rolled away. But whatever it is, physical or otherwise, are you wondering, how's God going to work this out? I'm asking him to remove this obstacle and you look up and you realize he's already taken care of it. He took care of it perhaps even miraculously. Or maybe he just had somebody else go, like a Joseph or like an angel, and move it away. But it wasn't for the purpose you had in mind. You just wanted to take care of some earthly need. You just wanted to take some spices. Something that is earthbound. And he's trying to bring you to an encounter with an alive, eternal Jesus. Always, that's the final goal. They found the stone. They did not find the body. They are teaching us something, aren't they, in this great story? How about verse 4? While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, and we would have felt the same, the women bowed down their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He's not here. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee? The Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. They sought the dead. They were focused on death. I mean, they had seen him die. The Gospels record that they were there. They saw that he was beaten and scourged so badly that pieces of flesh were torn from his back and his legs and his sides and his arms and even his face and his neck and the back of his head, pieces of flesh torn. They saw all of that beating and scourging. And they saw him carry that 75 to 125 pound crossbeam that he was forced to put on his shoulders. And they saw the 7-inch square Roman nails that were punched into his wrists and into his feet. They saw that. They saw him struggling to breathe, arching his back to be able to get his lungs open enough so he wouldn't be suffocated, so he could take some of those breaths, so he could get the air into his lungs. But even though there were times he could get perhaps enough air into his lungs, he was losing blood. And we only have a little over a gallon of blood in us. And with all that he had been through, it wasn't long before he died. They saw it. They weren't seeking a living body. They were looking for a corpse. They were looking for a gross scene. It's always been our world, hasn't it? We live in a world that's always been focused on death. They can't get their eyes off of death. Hemingway wrote, "There is no remedy for anything in life. Death," Hemingway said, "is the sovereign remedy for all misfortunes." And then he proved it, didn't he? By committing suicide. Focused on death. It's like the words of Macbeth. All our yesterdays have lighted fools. The way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Nothing. That's our world, focused on death. But the question asked to the women is, why are you focused on death? Why do you seek the living? They didn't realize, of course, he was the living. Why do you seek the living among the dead? Well, that just opened up a whole new prospect to these girls. I mean, is the end of the road up ahead not really the end? We've even put up a sign, the world has. Dead end. Huh. Could it be instead not an end, but a bend? A bend in the road? Isn't that what Jesus was trying to teach us? That is not the end. I have been there. I've taken care of it. There is life on the other side, or perhaps you could say around the corner. And what we need to say about that time when we realize that Jesus is telling us the truth. Jesus, you take the wheel. So often we're focused on death. And while we're focused on death, just like these women, we find life. The historical Jesus is significant. I like to say that today we are celebrating the greatest historical event in all of history. That we know that the resurrection happened on a specific day in history 2,000 years ago. But don't get hung up on the fact that Jesus is just one who is in the past. He is contemporary. We do not find Jesus among the dead. We find him among the living. Now, Socrates drank the hemlock. He died. He became a dead philosopher. Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. She became a dead martyr. But when Jesus was crucified on the cross, he became a living Savior. And whenever we reach that bend in the road, it doesn't matter how long the road was to get there. You understand what I'm saying? 5 years old, 25 years old, 95 years old, doesn't matter. It still equals, when we get there, infinity with the Lord. Understand that? Yeah. You could write out the equation. If you knew how old you were going to be when you died, you could put that number down and say equals, and then put in the infinity sign, the 8 that's laying on its side. Yeah. The women are teaching us something. The women at the tomb teach lessons for today. They found the stone, not the body. They sought the dead, but they found the living. And how about this last part? Look at verses 9 to 11. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene. We're being told who some of them were. Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. Verse 11. But they did not believe the women, because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Aha. They told the truth. They were not believed. They delivered the truth. They delivered the goods. But hey, they were women. And in that first century Jewish culture, do you know that a woman was not even allowed to be a witness in a court? Yeah. They considered them suspect when it came to truth telling. No women. I mean, that's why when the Lord chose these women to be his first witnesses, I think he did it with tongue in cheek. You know? I think he thought this is going to shake up some legalistic rabbis who have added so many extra rules and burdensome rules to my commands. Why, I'll just send women to be the first witnesses of the most important event in all of history. And we are told they were not believed. In fact, it says their words seemed to them like nonsense. You know, when someone tells an incredible tale that we know absolutely couldn't be true, we say, they're ready for the little men in the white coats. I don't know. I remember saying that as a kid, not knowing really where it came from or whatever. They're ready for the little men in the white coats, the orderlies from some institution for the feeble-minded or the insane. Well, you know what? These women had seen the men in the white coats. Yeah, dazzling. It says, like lightning, like snow, it says. And their seemingly incredible tale was just too much for those feeble-minded apostles, at least at that moment. And all of us have experienced that kind of letdown when you go rushing in with great news and they just pour cold water on it. I still remember I got straight A's, and I couldn't wait to get home and show my mom that card. And I got off the bike and I burst through the door holding that card. And she was on the phone. And sometimes when she got on the phone, it was a while before she got off. And I just sat there, the air out of me until I was deflated. Now, she shared in my joy, and I was fortunate enough that she believed me, that I hadn't doctored the card, that it was the real deal. But that initial feeling, you know, when you hit the wall, it still stings, doesn't it? And that's probably how these women felt. You know, for years, Satan and all of his demons, all of his critics, have used they've used the same sad sack voice from the grave that says, this is it. This is all there is. You'll never get out of here. Brothers and sisters, don't ever stop being truth deliverers like those women were. Remember that even the apostles at first rejected the greatest truth of all, the truth of the resurrection. Yet every one of them experienced a turnaround, and they became amazing truth deliverers themselves. In fact, they died for telling the truth. Picture an arch made out of stone, individual stones. Every rock arch in history has what's called a keystone. It's that one rock that holds all the others in place. Without it, the arch falls. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is unequivocally considered our faith's keystone. Without it, all else falls apart. But with it, it's all in place and it all holds together. Let's stand. Let's sing about that in this simple chorus that says basically, the resurrection of Jesus is my keystone. My keystone. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow.